he's a point man is necessarily correct.
But this is the man who has consulted video expertise around the world. There have been many analyses run of these videos, and the conclusion is they're genuine.
No, they're generally genuine. You read those reports properly, which I suspect you haven't done, and you will find that of the three experts, there are people who say, this video has been edited and it's shown upside down. What was filmed first is shown third. What was shown fifth was taken at a different location, perhaps on a different date. And we are shown this by Channel 4, who never told us this. So they have not backtracked. But if the experts say this has been edited upside down, I think we have to ask why. This is all we're asking. And what these guys say is that they asked for explanations from Channel 4 and they didn't get any. So please read these reports yourself.
You are an advisor to the President of Sri Lanka on reconciliation. I wonder, in that capacity, looking to heal wounds and to deliver a sense of justice and accountability, whether you've asked the President whether any of the Sri Lankan soldiers on those videos, apparently involved in the executions, have since been apprehended.
No, I haven't asked him that, but I have asked him with regard to other issues.
Have any of them been apprehended?
Well, we don't know who they are, because we can't go around...
You've seen the videos.
Do you really think that
some
we
of them
can
are
run around...
full-face, quite clearly identifiable soldiers? It's not beyond the ability of your army, is it, to identify the particular soldier involved?
To do an identity parade on 100,000 people? Are you really sort of serious?
I'm sorry, I'm amazed. You're telling me that when the most egregious human rights abuses are seen on a video involving soldiers from your army, no effort is made to bring those soldiers to book?
Oh, come on, Stephen. What we have said is we've asked for dates. If you remember, Channel 4 said that the first video was taken on January 19th, which turned out to be false. They haven't denied it now, but they have actually now said it happened on a different date. The second video that was shown was declared by the experts to have been microdated, or whatever it's called, on July 16th or 19th, which was long after the events. If they give us a date and a time, we can then find out who was somewhere there. What I have advocated, for instance, in terms of inquiry, is one incident which was reported on Channel 4 and which was reported us before, and I have suggested this should be looked at, which is the allegation about killing people who wanted to surrender. We have a date on that. We have people, and I think that is something that needs to be investigated.
Yes.
I have kept saying that.
You're here in London, it seems, to try to defend the Sri Lankan government at a time of great difficulty for your government, because not just the British government, but the US government, the European Union, are all saying that your stance in the wake of this video and the UN panel report is unacceptable. There has to be a new, a thorough and independent investigation of all these war crimes charges. Why won't your government agree?
Because we're not here to keep your electorate happy. If David Miliband confessed to the Americans that his purpose was to win elections, we think it's very shabby to put other countries at risk.
The State Department, for example, says just the other day that international accountability mechanisms can become appropriate when a state fails to meet its obligations. Does that not worry you at all?
When a state fails to meet its obligations, you know perfectly well that your country and the Americans will not allow the international community, as it's called, anywhere near. I know that they think they are the international community, so they don't need other people. But look at Bloody Sunday. Look at how long the inquiry took.
Yeah,
so please remember that it is the internal mechanism that's important.
You can just throw different cases at me from around the world, and of course we put the searching and the tough questions to people responsible for all sorts of different international interventions. It just so happens that you're here speaking for Sri Lanka. You're an advisor to the Sri Lankan president. So it probably would be helpful if we could just stick to what's happening in Sri Lanka.
But you're the one who introduced the British and the European and the American politicians.
Absolutely, who are calling for your government to undertake an independent, thorough investigation.
And I just made the point that if you're producing them as evidence, you better think again. But if you're saying I, Stephen Sackur, who is idealistic and genuine, think that you should have an inquiry, let me tell you that I would perfectly agree that the Sri Lankan government is pledged in the event of evidence being given to us that we can count on, as opposed to different dates and edited videos, to look into it. I have already told you 2 or 3 incidents, and I'm sure there are more in that Channel 4 episode as opposed to 59 minutes, that need further investigation. I think they mentioned one day in one of those episodes, confusing with the others, but where they said day, I think that is serious. I quite agree with you.
Let's look at your reconciliation remit. There is, of course, in Sri Lanka a Learned Lessons Commission, which is very much not a war crimes investigation. It's called a Learned Lessons Commission. Are you satisfied with the way that's working? Do you believe it's achieving anything when it comes to learning lessons and
I think it
reconciliation?
is. I mean, I tend to believe that most things can go more quickly than they do. As I said, I'm very critical of my people in Sri Lanka about how slow they are. I thought there should have been another interim report, and I said so. But of course, we can't affect the Commission.
Do you agree with the UN Secretary-General's panel that the Learned Lessons and Reconciliation Commission is deeply flawed? It cannot meet the Secretary-General's commitment to accountability.
Not at all. I don't agree with them in the slightest, because I think they were asked to appear before the panel. They refused. We actually asked some of the people who have given evidence to the UN panel to give the evidence to the LLRC. They refused. And then they say they're not good enough. I mean, how can a commission which is collecting evidence deal with matters which are not brought before it and given to someone else, and which are still not given to us? We've kept asking Channel 4 for this evidence. I think what is important there, Stephen, is what the Sri Lankan people are doing.
Why are there tens of thousands of Sri Lankan troops occupying military positions all over the north of the country when the war, as your army declared it so triumphantly, was over more than 2 years ago?
Very simply because there is fears, and I'm not able to tell them not to abandon these fears, that there are people trying to revive the LTT and terrorism. My personal belief is that the people of Sri Lanka largely would not worry about this, but when you have British politicians telling us to talk to the rump of the LTT here in preference to the Sri Lankan people, we fear that the money that was collected could be used to bad ends. So we have to be careful.
Let's not focus just on what the British government says. The Indian Prime Minister on the 29th of June said, our emphasis is to persuade the Sri Lankans to move towards institutional reforms where Tamil people will have a feeling that they are equal citizens, not second-class citizens.
That is our aim as well. But we have to, the reason he used those words...
It's a very odd way of going about it. For example, you know, the Sri Lankan government, in theory, has had a long-term commitment to devolution of power. Devolution of power simply has not happened in the north of the country. The 13th Amendment, it's called, it hasn't been applied to the north of the country.
Because we haven't had an election, but we're planning to do one soon. We're having local elections. The LTT didn't allow us to have local elections for 10 or 20 years. When we did have elections in the north, they murdered 3 mayors. I think the fact that we've now got an opposition mayor who's functioning is a good thing.
With respect, I'm sure you know much better than I do that the Tamil National Alliance has had its meetings broken up by the army in the last few weeks, and they're only actually fighting local town council elections.
No, you're perfectly right. There was a meeting, and I've asked for information about it. We discussed that with the Tamil National Alliance. As I told them, they benefited so much from it. I'm sure it wasn't them, but they were really quite happy about it.
If you are interested in achieving this accountability and asking difficult questions, how many Tamil houses have been occupied by the Sri Lankan army, do you think? Have you asked that question?
Well, I don't know the actual number, but a large number were given back.
It's a very important part
Stephen,
of reconciliation.
what you don't understand is that the reconciliation is about the people who suffered in the Vanni primarily, the political institutions. We have managed to return back to their homes almost all the 300,000. You know perfectly well that in 2009, we were told that one of the reasons Britain was concerned was they feared that we would keep these people in internment camps for years. We've had not a word of thanks for the fact that we've returned.
How many Tamils are still held in indefinite detention?
No one's held in detention, about 15,000.
No one's held in detention?
No, because the camps were opened in 2009.
The Prevention of Terror Act is still being employed, and there are still Tamils who for years have been in detention and continue to be in detention.
Stephen, I thought you were talking of the people who were displaced in the camps, who were accused of keeping internment camps. Almost all of them. Detention, the figure is something like 4,000. We brought it down from a much larger figure. When I was Secretary of the Ministry, we had a committee, and my line always to the Attorney General was either prosecute or release. We moved very quickly on that in 2009. In the last few months, we've I'm not Secretary of the Ministry anymore, but the commitment is there. But you're perfectly right, that's something on which we need to move much more quickly, because we've either got to prosecute or to release. Now, on that issue, many papers are with the Attorney General's department. There are many people, including my former minister and the Attorney General, who are trying to move. But you have to grant these things are slow. I mean, you people don't say a word about Guantanamo, do you? You don't worry about Guantanamo because your terrorists seem dangerous to you.
In a very interesting fashion, you've just opened up a real difference between you and the government there. But I just wonder how long you're prepared to work with this government if they don't listen to you. For example, your own party's website, the Liberal Party, says that the current constitution gives far too much power to the president. Sri Lanka lacks a system of checks and balances. This is your own political party criticising the authoritarian system which your country currently has with a massively powerful executive president.
Of course, and we have been criticizing it from 78 onwards, because we believe one of the fundamental flaws of the Sri Lankan constitution is that we have grafted a presidential system onto Westminster, which reduces the power of Parliament considerably, and that system is both illogical and should be changed. But changing it requires a two-thirds majority, and when you're in a coalition, as the Liberal Party here knows full well, you don't actually run the show. But you have to actually put your ideas forward, hope that they will have some impact, and make sure that nothing new that is against your principles will happen. But what the Constitution as it exists is not something you or I can change.
You may just find that you can't achieve reconciliation without justice.
Oh, I think we do want justice, but we also want reconciliation, and we want a prosperous future for our people. And we would welcome the support of what I would call the reasoner people in countries like this for that purpose.
Rajiva Wijesinha, we have to leave it there. Thanks for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much indeed.